Welcome to another episode of the Business is Blumin podcast. We've got an awesome show today. We've got an incredible guest. He's an entrepreneur. He knows a ton about Salesforce, the founder of Navirum. Rory, how you doing?
Great to see you today, Daniel. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. Excited to have you on. We're going to get into a ton of exciting stuff today. But just to start out, I know you have a really interesting corporate background and kind of just backstory. So I'd love to know a bit about your background.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm actually a software engineer by trade. So I did a computing degree back in Dublin, Ireland. Grew up there, and I graduated from that 4 years, and I got into program with Accenture like straight out of college, and I moved to London in the UK, which is, if you're in Pennsylvania, it's a bit like going to New York City or something like that. Like it's not that far away. And I moved over there and, got into the corporate world. Started off there at pretty much a young age in my early 20s.
Mhm.
And I was there for a couple of years, and it was great. Like I really enjoyed the people I worked with, the company, the projects we were working on were interesting. And, I'm still friends with, a lot of the people, even back then, 20 years later that I used to work with.
Mhm.
Um, but I was doing a lot of travel. I was like traveling all around the UK, these kind of different like business parks. And I was in my early 20s, and I was like, this is really not what I signed up for. Like, I mean, it's great working 12, 14, 16 hours a day, but like I need to be somewhere. I need to go and, meet friends, family afterwards and have a life. Like it was just all work. And so I was working on a big project with the UK pension the department, and sort of got me a foothold into financial services, into banking and stuff.
Mhm.
And I wasn't really, even back then, I wasn't really aware that I was in sort of financial services even. And I got a job working in Merrill Lynch then in the City of London. I left after a couple of years. I did Accenture for about two years or so, and moved on. And yeah, stepped into the world of banks, and I worked in their prime brokerage.
Mhm.
So prime brokerage is basically like a banker to hedge funds. So and again, I was pretty naive in terms of, what to expect, but like, we were sort of integrating technically like all the hedge funds into Merrill so they could trade. And that was really exciting because, you're working alongside, a lot of the major bankers, investment bankers and stuff in London and in Wall Street as well. Working, I used to annoy them. I used to go and sit on their trading desk while they were, and got a bit of a reputation for doing things I shouldn't do, but that's who I am.
Yeah.
And then the financial crisis happened. It hit in sort of 2007, 2008, and we could see things were really getting bad, like pretty quickly in there, like in terms of credit markets were deteriorating.
Mhm.
And Merrill was in the midst of all of that because of the securitization of mortgages, and so they basically went out of business. And it was a painful 18-month period, like with TARP and all that sort of stuff. And eventually, the banks were divvied up, and Bank of America were like, okay, you're just going to have to take over Merrill and what's left of it. So I got brought into the world of big commercial banking in Bank of America. And that was I guess Merrill back then would have been sort of a boutique investment and research and trading, house. And
Mhm.
then Bank of America is this enormous, bank, that like retail bank, commercial bank, and that was another experience, working with those guys. So it was like 4 or 5 years that I did in there, and I would say I learned a huge amount, but um, I would also say that like it was very difficult because it was in the middle of that financial crisis, and a lot of my friends and stuff lost their jobs, and it was hard, But I had an opportunity then in late 2010 to get out of that and help a friend start a company.
Mhm.
So I kind of that was my kind of starting point where I kind of got out of the world of consulting and banking and started my own little consulting company. Again in London, and I was helping out again more banks do stuff, and that was great. But I think to kind of fast forward, I wanted to go back to college. I wanted to do an MBA, sort of something I always wanted to do. So I started that in 2011, and then I was sort of like, I'm definitely going to go back and start, revive this business that I'd started, or sort of get back into that world. And I ended up doing an interview for Salesforce and really liked it, really liked the company, really liked the culture. Again, it was completely different to anything I'd ever seen. Like in terms of like, it's a big Silicon Valley software company, and it was really exciting. It was really refreshing. And I ended up working in there for 6 or 7 years. So, and here I am today with Navirum. So we're a Salesforce consulting partner in the financial services space. So sort of closed the loop on everything. And company's 5 years old this month.
Got it. Awesome. Really appreciate the background. We'll definitely dive into a lot more things there. But just to ask off the bat, you said you worked kind of within Merrill Lynch a little before it was acquired by Bank of America during this really tumultuous time. I know it's a crisis. I know right now is some economic uncertainty. Hopefully it doesn't get to the extent that it was in 2008. During that time, what were some common integration issues that you saw between kind of prime brokerage and their hedge fund clients?
Issues? Oh my God. Well, a big issue would have been around speed and processing, how you process hundreds of millions of billions of dollars of transactions every day. So speed was a big thing, and making sure that to optimize how these hedge funds could trade with Merrill was really, really important. So proximity to exchanges was a big thing. Using particular technologies to process huge volumes of transactions was another thing. And just continuity, like you can't really, you have to have a system that runs 24/7, or when the exchanges are open, I should say. So the issues were really sort of around performance and availability of services. And, those companies have really amazing engineers working in them. Like, they're not normal people. Like, they've got the cream of the crop in there. I've got like math, physics, savants from like, 12 years of age that went to university and stuff like that, like, who are just really, really good. So they've got great people on it the whole time, keeping the show on the road. And, but in there, in terms of integration, they would process lots of different file formats, not file form, message formats, technical formats. So they pretty much take in, they make it work. They don't kind of say, well, we don't do this, we don't do that. They're open to sort of pretty much everything. So yeah, so
Lots of fun issues to deal with, I imagine. No, that's really interesting to hear about. Another thing that we want to get into, just regarding the banking world and working in it, and we'll get some of it early on too. But as with kind of speed, and obviously in market, speed matters because you want the best prices for clients, and everything is, at least in sales trading, everything is kind of boom, boom, boom. We're able to deal with, or kind of within the bank, we're able to deal with just evolving regulations, especially during kind of the financial crisis.
I think a lot of banks were not able to deal with the changes, frankly, and I think it kind of, it gave sort of rise to a lot of software companies that ended up creating platforms to help them do that. And I think the reality is that, like, the cost of, regulation is enormous for these companies. And, really, it's only the big banks who can afford it, the best lawyers, the best, regulatory teams. So it's always a big challenge, especially in big companies with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees, different jurisdictions. It becomes very, very complicated. And so the reality, so a lot of software companies have sprung up in the past 15 years as a result of that to help. And then, like, today, you've got a lot of fintech companies, in the world. Like, you've got Stripe, you've got Wealthsimple up in Canada. You've got, there's so many of them, but they're built. Regulation is built into their stack in terms of what they do. So they're able to evolve a lot easier with what's going on. But when I was in there, like, we would get changes all the time coming in that we had to kind of just upgrade our software to deal with and our processes. And it was just an ongoing thing, never ending.
I'd imagine. Actually, I read an article not too long ago about just banking regulations and how, there's not as related, but regarding a lot of their capital structures, with just debt and equity. I won't get into the whole financial hoopla of that, but basically how it's that, I believe it was by CNBC, that in the coming years, a lot of the bigger banks are going to absorb a lot of these small and regional banks, just because a lot of these regulations, a lot of these capital requirements are really difficult to handle. So similar to what you said when the financial crisis hit, that a lot of these companies or a lot of these banks just weren't able to kind of hold up with a lot of these regulations. So ultimately, the bigger banks, I call them the bulge bracket balance sheet banks, to say the least, could really absorb a lot of it. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that parallels.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think we saw that with like Silicon Valley Bank, the collapse there. I guess, they reduced a lot of the regulation for those community banks, which led to issues in terms of their solvency as companies, as you saw with big withdrawals of funds, and any sort of like so it precipitated a lot of problems. But those was because there's a lack of regulation. So I think that regulation in banking is really needed, like, especially in lending and insurance and stuff like that, because otherwise these banks can just, on a bad rumor, can go out of business overnight, so that's not good for consumers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes in the future, but appreciate the conversation around that, and more about kind of regulation implications during your time at Merrill Lynch. To get a little more in depth into your career, you started at Accenture. You mentioned how you were working these crazy consultant hours that I'm sure if there's consultants like this can probably relate to something that you said as well. But
for sure.
Made the move to Merrill Lynch. We'd love to know more in depth, kind of the decision making behind that, and ultimately why you wanted to move from just consulting to more financial services oriented role.
Well, I figured that like I could just build out like expertise, and there was just a unique opportunity. If you're living in London or Tokyo or New York, like, you're surrounded by financial services all the time, and I felt it was something I could learn and build an expertise in, and that could play out as a great career and long term. And it was also like I was sick of like traveling around these random places all over the UK that, like, I had no life. And I think personally, like, I think back then, like, I wanted to make money, but like not at the cost of like my own personal life as well. I think that's something that's kind of been with me my whole career. I think is that, like, there's a trade-off between both. But really it was that, and just my skills, my background in technology and consulting, that sort of led me into it.
Got it. Interesting. I mean, I know, early on, definitely a lot of people are hungry to make an impact, but there's probably a lot of consultants that are silently kind of yelling and agreeing with you, in the sense that they have like a 7 to 8 hour workday, but combined with all the traveling, everything adds up. It's definitely tough to balance.
Yeah, I mean, I think the world has changed now. Obviously, like, there's a lot of people, like, with Navirum, we all effectively. I'm in our office today, but like, our team for the most part work remotely, or they work from sort of like co-working spaces, once a week or something. So I think it was like necessary to, for security reasons and stuff, to go in. If you go back to consulting, like, it was necessary to go into the office because you were connected to networks, and there was access to resources, and you didn't have the collaboration tools like we have today, like Zoom and Slack and Teams and all that sort of stuff. So I think it sort of led to this really big amount of hours that you're actually spending in the office versus at home. I'm absolutely not against working hard. Like, I still work, long hours, but like, it's balanced with being at home and being in the office, which I think it's a great, compared to where we were 20 years ago, it's a great opportunity for people in the business.
Got it. So on a quick note regarding that, as the head of your own company, do you find that there's any productivity or performance difficulties with people being remote? Because I know it's a hot topic right now between a lot of bigger banks actually forcing folks back in the office. So I'd love to know your
I would say that performance issues. I think given the way our business works, we're kind of billing hours. So like it's very kind of clear in terms of people's productivity whether they're doing the work or not. So I think productivity and whether you get your work done or not is the new sort of measure of success. All right, for people now. For us, like our team need to keep up their expertise. They need to train themselves. So, as long as they're doing their work and they're getting their work done and they're brushing up on their skills and they're, networking and attending events related to our industry and stuff like that. Like, I think we can measure those things ourselves, but like, I think, but that doesn't suit everybody. Like, if you're not interested in what we do, if you're not interested in consulting or technology or financial services, you might find you're not motivated to work. And, I think we can quickly see people who are and who are not in terms of like, I think safely say all of our team right now are great. Like they're all highly motivated and they love what they do. So, but we have had people in the past that were just not interested in it, who were just, couldn't stay at their desk, or, they, weren't enjoying it. And I think that's fine. Those people move on and we keep the people who do want to be here. So, but like, I think it's really output is really the measure of a person's success and if they're building their skills. So I think that can be measured now.
I definitely agree with that too. I think a lot of times people have this fear that people aren't in person, there's going to be some kind of issue or lack in productivity. But I think this definitely resonates with you as the founder of your own firm, the head of the beast here. If you show trust in your employees and you have faith that they're there to be really motivated and be high performers and that they love what they do, then really kind of shouldn't matter where they do it from.
Yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't like working remotely 100% or even like 90%. It doesn't suit everybody, right? You have to be at a sort of probably a particular time of your life. Like if you're straight out of college, straight out of university, like you probably want to spend at least 4 or 5 years in an office, if not longer, meeting people, building your skill set, building your network, before you kind of go into it. Like I think pretty much all of our team are like in their 30s, like at this stage. Like I'm just trying to think. Yeah, pretty much everyone is on like they're past, they're over that hump,
Mhm.
and they've got kids, or they just, some people just bought homes, and you know they're sort of at a time in their life where it suits them to work remotely.
Mhm.
So that's a key thing. And also I think like having stability at home as well. Like, if you're, sharing a 3 bedroom apartment with 6 guys or something like that, a bit over the top, and you need to have peace and quiet to work, it's not going to be the best environment for you to be in. So being in an office in that case is going to be a lot better.
Got it. So it sounds like in the beginning of your career to kind of really get your feet wet as much as you can, but as you advance throughout your life and just life happens, if you can have the same productivity at home, it may just be better to be remote. So I think it's a really,
Yeah.
really good perspective. But no, great to discuss around that. Another
Yeah.
thing regarding your career, know you worked at Bank of America, then ultimately transitioned to Salesforce. Would love to know why you made that transition and ultimately what you did at Salesforce.
um yeah, I mean, it's a. I actually, I mean, I wanted to go on and get back into running companies and starting businesses straight after my MBA, but like I always felt like I didn't really have a background in sales and marketing, and like I always felt that was a really important skill to have to grow a business, So I felt like doing a year or two in Salesforce would give me that experience, and I really didn't intend to spend as long as I did in there. And I just really enjoyed it. Like, great company, great culture. It was growing, still is growing like crazy, and just kind of got swept away with that while I was in there. It was unintentional. I think as well, it was so different. Like when I was in banking, like it was like, be at your desk at, 7:30 in the morning, work till 6:30 every night. It was like it was just, and it was 5 days a week as well. It wasn't like it was like, oh, let's go and clock out on a Friday. It was like I routinely be in my office until after 6 on a Friday. just trying to get things done for a release that weekend or something that happened or getting a project done. It was like, it was like a 50, 60 hour week every week, unrelenting. When I was in Accenture before, it was like, okay, you might have 3 months where you're working long hours, and then there's a period where it's kind of quiet, it calms down, you can come in at 9:30, you can leave at 4, half day on a Friday, or you're traveling a lot, like 4 days a week, and then Fridays are like, come into the office for a few hours, just, have lunch, coffee, and go home. But when I was in Bank of America and Merrill, it was just like work, 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 work all the time. But so when I joined Salesforce, it was just so different. Like it was like I had a lot more freedom. I was traveling a lot more. Um, I had that sort of work-life balance, where even back then, like in the early 2010, 11, 12, yeah, we're working from home or we're working from hotels, and just the work-life balance was a lot better. And plus it was getting to meet like great companies, selling them Salesforce, getting them transition to the platform. And I worked alongside great people. It was a really sort of vibrant, happy environment for the most part. And it just, I think that really kept me there. It was just so different. It was a very like optimistic environment with great people. And before that, like when I was in banking, it was all about work. And then we had the financial crisis, and then it was just like difficult 18 months. And I was like, I want to do something completely different. I want to get, I think, most people coming out of that world, and I know so many who just completely just got out of banking completely. They started, I know guys started a wine business. He's like a little a wine store. Somebody else started a software company. Somebody else who got into like property development, just different things. It was like, there was like a bit of PTSD going on there, I think, after all of that.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. It's
Yeah,
interesting dynamic actually to bring up, because I think maybe not as much in maybe the 2000s, early 2010s, but in the last 5-ish years, there's probably been a big talent war amongst banking and tech. Obviously a lot of folks want to work these investment banking jobs. They get, these great
Yeah,
salaries, for junior level, but you're working maybe potentially 80 to 100 hours a week, as opposed to tech, which is
yeah.
grown in recent years and has a lot of funding. Now folks can make maybe equivalent money working half the time. So it'll be interesting to see where that dynamic kind of goes down the line, for sure.
Oh yeah, completely. Like, and I think as well, like, um, I think a lot of these, a lot of tech companies, they just offer sort of a lifestyle that is more balanced for a lot of people. And whether it's Google or whether it's Salesforce, like they put their employees first, and you know, so they hire the best and the brightest as a result.
So do you think that banks are going to be able to compete with them regarding lifestyle, or do you think banking is just such a traditional structure that they're never going to be able to have the same lifestyle offering as tech companies?
Well, I think a lot of companies do now. Like, I think there are like so many fintech companies out there that have sort of blend technology with banking and insurance. Like, if you look at Stripe, for example, it's a private company as well. I don't know what their valuation is now. It's probably like $100 billion or something, if not more. And it's from what I understand in there, like it's like working in a software company. It's not like working in a bank at all, and yet it's used by millions of companies across the world every day to process payments. So that culture would be very, very different. Um, but I also think that, like, as well, like with banking, like, and a lot of it goes on, like a lot of it is like related to, if you look at commercial banking, like it's like somebody wants to buy a building, for example, and the building is like, $200 million or something like that. Like, it's a big corporate transaction to do that. So there's a lot of wining and dining and analysis that goes into those deals to make them happen. So it's kind of corporate in its nature, if you know what I mean. I'm not sure if I was trying to take out a $200 million loan to buy a building, and the lender turned up in a pair of jeans and a hoodie, how I'd feel about that. I think I'd want them to be at least, in a shirt. So I think there's a certain part of it that will always be sort of banking. But there's a lot of stuff that's related to technology and apps and integration and stuff. I think we'll kind of go down the sort of technology culture route.
Got it. So it sounds like it could be more of a balanced approach regarding a lot of things that
Yeah,
can, I don't want to say outsourced, but a lot of things that can be automated with technology or advancements in AI, but certain aspects, like a $200 million loan is a $200 million loan, no matter who you take it from. So I think maybe some aspect of it will always be corporate. So interesting insight
yeah,
on that. But kind of the other thing to get into, no, you mentioned you work in the financial services area there, and while you were still doing financial services, the culture was a little better, but ultimately, kind of after establishing yourself as a top performer at Salesforce, you went on to start this great company, Navirum. So,
yeah.
to know ultimately, initially, why you decided to leave Salesforce and kind of go out on your own.
Well, I think it kind of it comes back to, like, I always sort of had an entrepreneurial sort of part of me, like even as a kid, like, I was the kid with the paper round, and I was mowing lawns and I was buying and selling things. So I was always sort of like that as a kid, a child growing up. And I think it's sort of just, I always had that entrepreneurial itch in the corporate world. Like, I was never really a corporate. I did a lot of corporate work, but it never really was who I was, being honest with you. Like, I could see, you know, when I was in Accenture, people were, couldn't wait to become partners in Accenture. Or when I was in Merrill, everyone wanted to become a director or a managing director. When I was in Salesforce, people really wanted to become regional vice presidents. And I think it was the same thing. You see people who really want it, and they're really going after it in those companies. And I felt like my desire was to have my own business and have my own companies and grow those, because there wasn't a lack of hard work or ambition on my side. It's just, I just needed to direct it into a certain thing. So, you know, and I think you need to take a calculated risk when you start a company as well. Like, you're giving up a lot. You're giving up salary. You're giving up pensions. You're giving up benefits. All that sort of stuff. So, I think when I had the idea for Navirum, it was the right time, the right place, and the right experience. It sort of all sort of came together. So I felt like it was a good opportunity to go and do it. So that's kind of why I was actually, I was going down the leadership route in Salesforce. There was like, that was sort of laid out for me in there. But now I sort of took that leadership ambition into running a business instead. So, we haven't looked back.
I think it's a great way, a great jumping start. We'll get into kind of more specifically what the company does and how you help
Yeah,
clients. But I think it's an interesting struggle that a lot of folks have in corporate America, where the great benefits, everything is very defined.
yeah,
And not everyone loves their job, and maybe a good self exercise for people to do is to think if they could see themselves doing their boss's job or their boss's job, essentially. Because ultimately, if you don't see yourself becoming an executive in a company, I think that's like an internal moment of awakening. You're like, what the hell am I doing here?
yeah. Look, I mean, I think that, like, there's some amazing leaders that I worked with in all of those companies over the years, and people that I still think about to today. Like, if I'm in a particular situation, I'm thinking, well, what would she do? What would he do? And I can hear their voices in my head. And I think some people are just really cut out for that corporate world. They're just really, they can deal with the internal politics. They are great leaders and mentors. They're great communicators. And I think that, like, some people, have to come to the realization that they might be better off in that business doing what they're doing than stepping out into the world of running a business. So, people really need to reflect on that. Now, I think when it came to my decision to set up Navirum, like, I took my own perspective, but I took other people's perspectives as well, like my wife's, for example. And she was like, look, I think, this is going to suit you. I think that you should give it a go. I think, she could see me doing other things outside of Salesforce, like, that were kind of entrepreneurial, that I was doing anyway. She's like, I think you'd be good at this. I think you should go for it. I think you've got the personality for it. I think you enjoy sort of thriving in chaos, sort of thing. And, that running a business is very, very chaotic at times and unpredictable, and people need to be okay with that. So I think for me, it was like my own desire to do it, but input from other friends and family members that sort of pushed me over the edge, and gave me the confidence to go do it.
Awesome. It's like the ultimate oxymoron. Running a business is being at peace with the chaos. So it sounds like two contradicting terms, but I'm sure that's something you're probably familiar with on a day-to-day basis, but kind of great to hear.
Well, I think you need to be comfortable with chaos. Now, I think that chaos sort of just emerges, during the week in various different forms. But like, I think the great thing about a company is that you can sort of structure that chaos over time. And in the rear view mirror, all that chaos that you had before should sort of look like processes and systems, and it should gradually mature into a platform for your company. So I think you need to have that sort of problem solving ability and the mentality that, like, we're going to get better at this each day, each week, each month. And it's not going to happen straight away, but over time, we're going to get on top of this thing. So you have to have the confidence that you can do that. I think that's a key thing. So right now we work with a lot of small to medium sized companies from, 10 people to, two or 300, to help them, transform and become more efficient, more competitive. Just had a meeting before this with a new customer, and her goal is cost cutting within the company. She's the operations manager. She wants to get rid of a bunch of software systems. She wants to consolidate onto Salesforce. And I'm always thinking in that mindset with these companies, is like, what business goal are we trying to achieve here? Don't forget the technology. Like, Salesforce is really obviously really important, but what are we trying to solve here? Are we so that's what I do day in day out, is help those companies to improve and get better. And and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy helping people improve and get better and stuff. And that's a key part of what we do.
I know you have a lot of financial services clients. What are some common issues that you see within their integration with Salesforce, and how are you able to alleviate those?
Well, I would say the technology is really, really good. I can't fault the system itself. And I think very often the challenges that we face with a lot of clients are helping them to transform themselves. Like, change nobody likes change. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is. So companies, they go and they buy a system like Salesforce, and it's like buying a Ferrari. It's only good if you can actually drive and get in there and maintain it and take care of it. If you could easily write it off, driving it around the block, and very easy just to leave it in a garage and not maintain it for a couple of years, and the engine has difficulties. But so companies need to get into that mindset of training and enabling their team internally. So that usually is the hardest part. The technology kind of is not that hard, but it's helping people to transform themselves and their cultures, and to have a slightly different mindset is the challenge. But we've got ways and means of doing that, processes and stuff like that, methodologies, and so that, I think it's the people aspect of it is the hurdle that we need to get over around a lot of these projects.
Interesting. Is there, Salesforce is obviously this huge company that people know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's any reason that people have difficulty understanding it sometimes, or kind of need advisory help to fully integrate?
Yeah, I mean, I think really, like, it's a broad platform, and I think it can do a lot of different things, across sales, marketing, customer service, middle and back office, integrating with other systems. So it's really like, it's an expensive system as well. Like, it's a big investment. It's an asset for a company. So I think that, like, you don't want to waste that money. Like, you want to get it set up as efficiently as possible and get your team onto it and start getting value from it straight away. And that's really our job, is to make that happen. And to also bring our industry expertise to bear as well, sort of to think about, like, well, as a wealth manager, as an RIA, how should we be using this? What's the best? How can we get value out of it? What other systems can we fold into it as well? So, we, as part of our process, we do all of that.
Got it. No, interesting. So it sounds like a lot of times, specifically speaking of financial services, a lot of the companies may be really integrating to their day to day, just focused on what they're doing. So
Yeah.
through no fault of their own, they're just not as naturally familiar with the systems and integrations and what you do. I mean, especially it's probably convenient for you because you were in those shoes, so maybe you know some of the issues they deal with. So be able to come in and understand their point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, like, culturally, like, a lot of wealth managers and community banks and stuff like that, they are more people led. Like they're very much like, we want to meet our customers, we want to build relationships with them, we want to help them through the various different life events they're going through, from marriage through to their kids through to retirement. So it's a people orientated industry, right? But the technology is not at the forefront. So we help them with that along the way. Now, you look at fintech companies, that are really technology led, and they might have an internal change management team, and they might have business analysts and project managers, and perhaps they could take it on themselves. So where we operate, the part of the market we operate is where there's a demand for the services we needed for those companies, because they don't, or culturally they're finding it hard to change. So, we focus on those.
Got it. No, that's incredible. Awesome work that you do for those companies, and definitely great to work with these financial services firms and help them kind of culturally understand,
Yeah.
with a different technology company. But I think it's incredible that you have this perspective, from financial services, from technology, kind of married the two, and then now you help these tech companies with the integration. So really cool work that Navirum does. Another thing or another question I had, where do you see Navirum going in the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to keep growing and, keep hiring and keep expanding as a company, keep deepening our expertise in what we do. And, as a business, like, no intention of selling it. We just want to keep growing. And I think we're in a really good place right now in terms of how we're operating. And I think the team that we have and our processes. So we just want to build on that. I think that companies, they go through different stages, and I think we've had a big focus on our internal operations for the past 6 months to improve our delivery process, or and that consolidation has been a really worthwhile exercise to go through. So we'll just keep working on that until the end of the year, and then we're going to go back on a bigger growth trajectory. We are growing fast, but I think a bigger emphasis on growth going into next year.
Okay.
So yeah, the plan is to keep growing, and yes, I think acquiring other businesses is definitely part of our strategy. I think right now, for the next 18 months, 2 years, we probably won't acquire any other companies, but I think it definitely will be part of it in the future for sure.
Awesome. Strategy. Yep. Cool work that you do. I wish you onward and continued success, and hopefully, these financial circumstances do not hinder your company's growth, and hopefully you can just keep getting financial services clients and helping them with their integrations. But to get into a bit more on the personal side, on some notes, Rory, in your life, when you don't run Navirum, what brings you happiness?
Oh my God. Yeah, I think, I do, I exercise a lot. I kind of, I cycle, I run, I go to the gym. I'm in a running club and a cycling club. So, try to exercise as much as possible. Love food, food and wine, travel, and, I've got a 5-year-old boy as well, my son, Louis. So, spending a lot of time with him. I'm currently helping him to build a robot. So that's kind of one of my focuses. And, so family life, exercise, travel. That's what I do to, play quite a bit of chess as well. So, and I read. So, I try to fit all that in somewhere in between work. So that's kind of what I get up to. Yeah.
Do you play chess.com at all?
Yeah. I use chess.com. Yeah.
I actually grew up playing chess, and
okay.
Playing chess tournaments and play on chess.com as a hobby whenever I'm not doing this. So I'll have to.
Yeah. Chess.com is great. Yeah. I think next thing is to teach my son how to play. So probably, I guess, they start kids at 2 years old, but, we'll bring them in slowly,
I think the current world, the former world, I keep forgetting that Magnus Carlsen isn't the current world champion anymore, but yeah. I think he started, at age 4 or 5. So, your son might be the next Magnus. You never know. It will be interesting to see.
Who knows? Yeah. He seems interested in it. So, we'll see.
Good. Well, we'll see. If he's ever world champ, we can say that it started first mentioned on this podcast, but really cool there. And last thing to get into, is there anything else you want to share with people, whether it's business advice, life advice, anything else you think people should know? Or is yours, Rory?
Um, well, I mean, I think that like again, thanks again for the opportunity to share my story, and anybody who's thinking about uh transitioning out of the corporate world to start a company, they're free to reach out to me and ask for my input. I'll be happy to do that. I think that like anybody who is looking to start a business, like obviously it's a calculated risk, and I think you need to think about people dependent on you before you go doing it, and that sort of thing. But I'd say that like get input from others, what other people think. I think that's you get that 360-degree view is really important as well. And to give it a shot. I think one thing I would say to anybody who's thinking about getting into starting a business is just to start one on the side. I heard somebody say recently that like there's nothing to stop you setting up a business on Shopify selling sports memorabilia or fishing rods or whatever it might be, just to get the experience of running a company, the marketing, closing books every month, hiring an accountant, managing your cash flow. It might only be a small business and it might have a very small turnover, but at least you'll get a taste for it. So I think there's ways and means to do that now without, burning the ships and quitting your job. And, I think that's something people should think about as well.
Right? So getting the feedback, risk. I think that's good
Yeah.
advice. Right? Overall, Rory, thank you so much for your time. You have an incredible career journey, working at Merrill Lynch, Salesforce, and running Navirum. Wish you continued success, and thank you for taking the time to go on the Business is Blumin podcast.
Thanks, Daniel. My pleasure.